quel che dico e quel che faccio eppure dopo forzati sei tu forse tu sei pagliaccio. La tuba era fatta farina, la gente paga e rider vuole questi arlechin tirvano colombina ridi pagliato e ognuno t'applaudirà tramuta e latti lo spasmo ed il pianto.
Hi, and welcome back to the New School Singer. Let me get my music down here. And we're going to be continuing on with this reading of Hints on Singing by Manuel Garcia. If you haven't started at the beginning, well, you're welcome to join now, but you can also watch the previous live streams if you're interested in having the whole book read to you. But we're going to start today where we left off yesterday with Hints on Singing by Manuel Garcia. Also, if you're not sure why we would be reading this, I suggest watching the first live stream. But of course, I might talk about that more if I feel like it. So let's see, where were we? I marked the spot, so should be able to find this here. And, of course, since this is an old school book, and we have to be respectful of old school things, I don't have the bullshit meter or anything. We're just reading the book here. So we were talking about, let's see, we had finished with breathing, and I guess we were going to be reading about the glottic action. So I'm just going to actually, write this is where we finished for number 1. So going on, let me have some coffee. We'll get a little bit of background here. Let's see. I'm gonna adjust my chair, make it easier to read. All right. How can you obtain the sensation of the glottic action? Answer: by coughing almost imperceptibly. The glottis then closes and opens. Through these actions, we feel it distinctly. And let's see. Okay, so I'm going to actually read this note at the bottom of the book, at the bottom of the page here. The importance of the larynx as the producer of all vocal sounds justifies us in studying it more minutely than other parts of the instrument. The framework of the larynx includes the following cartilages. Oh, so I'll make this a bit bigger. Sorry, guys. I didn't realize it wasn't as big as it could be here. It's too big. Okay. The framework of the larynx includes the following cartilages: the thyroid, the cricoid, the two arytenoids, surmounted by two nodules called cartilages of the Santorini, and the epiglottis. I guess those are now cuneiform cartilages or something. Yeah. Santorini. I like that. It's old school words. Oops. Oh, 1 second. Okay. So I switched my notes for the live stream yesterday. Okay. Where was I? The framework of the larynx, yes, the Santorini and the epiglottis. These cartilages are movable by means of appropriate muscles. It's good not to use inappropriate muscles. I should keep my comments down here. The interior of the larynx narrows toward the center to a mere chink or fissure called the glottis. This opening, which can be seen with the laryngoscope, is bounded by two edges, placed one on the right and the other on the left. These edges constitute the lips of the glottis. Posteriorly, they are formed by the internal surface of the arytenoid cartilages, and in front by the vocal cords. The vocal cords are two deep folds of the mucous membrane. In each of them, immediately beneath the edge of the fold, lies a band of elastic tissue known as the inferior thyroarytenoid ligament or true cord. The outer side of this fold is filled by the internal thyroarytenoid muscle. At a little distance above these folds are placed two others called false cords, which are separated from the former by two cavities, the ventricles. The lips of the glottis alone produce all vocal sounds, with their modifications of ringing and veiled quality of piano and forte. The space between the lips in the act of respiration has nearly the form of a horizontal isosceles triangle, and becomes linear when preparing to produce a sound. So he's describing the glide and rotation combination of the arytenoids. Oh, sorry, comments here. The triangular is the form of silence, the linear of activity. The closing of the lips I call pinching of the glottis. And here we have some figures. I can zoom in, I guess. Put my coffee down. So I have these figures, and they're a little bit. I mean, the modern stuff's a bit. It is better, but still, you can see. You've got your. Oh, that's a bit big, isn't it? Let me see. Make my pen a little bit smaller here. Okay. Right. So, turn the eraser off. Oh, come on now. I see. Okay. So you want to be like that, eh? Okay. Here at A, we've got the arytenoid cartilage, and where he's got the dotted lines versus the solid lines, he's trying to show you open versus closed. So this triangle he was talking about was the dotted. If you follow the dotted lines, let's see. Yeah. So if we follow the dotted lines, this is the triangle. Well, not really. More like, oh geez. I guess that's the triangle he's talking about. This shape. And that's, he says, for silence, and then when it's more linear, for activity. Yeah. So that's it's not the clearest, but he's, you know, for the time, pretty amazing. He's giving singers this anatomical information, and he's also claiming to be basing his exercises and stuff on this information. Where he says chords, we say folds now, and it's not so popular to say chink of the glottis anymore. And of course we have this like Santorini stuff that's not familiar anymore. So if you go on like an anatomy website and you're looking up this Santorini cartilages, you're not going to find it. But otherwise, all this stuff is the same as it is today, what he's talking about. See anything from the description that stands out? I guess we don't say thyroarytenoid ligament anymore. It's the vocal ligament, I guess. But still, today there's still different names for things today that you see depending on which exact model of anatomy that you're looking at, and then it's not always noted that you're looking at a different model of anatomy, so it can be a little bit confusing. But anyway, the glottis, as seen with laryngoscope during easy inspiration, is figure 6. And we can't see much here. So we'll just move on. Yeah. Eminence formed by the cartilage of Santorini. Santorini! I can't see what that's pointing to. I guess I don't know which. I can't tell what that's pointing to. Yeah, I guess cuneiform, because it lies on the summit of the arytenoid cartilage. So now we would say apex, blah, blah, blah. The epiglottis, D, is seen in the bird's eye view. The eminence close above the chords is its cushion. Okay. The true vocal cord between this and its fellow is the chink of the glottis. Okay. Figure 7. Diagram of the larynx in horizontal section showing the chink of the glottis bounded behind by the internal surfaces of the arytenoid and cricoid cartilages, and in front of these by the true vocal cords. The dotted lines show the position of the cricoid cartilage and vocal cords when the glottis is open. The direction of the contracting force, the cricoarytenoidus posterior muscle, is indicated by the arrows. Direction cricoarytenoidus posterior muscle. So I guess that would be direction. So maybe lateral. I don't know. Maybe LCA. Lateral cricoarytenoid helping out. Or it could just be the transverse arytenoid. Okay. Anyway. The same parts showing the position of the arytenoid cartilages and the vocal cords of the glottis, drawn together by the arytenoid muscle and closing the glottis. Let's go back and read that again. Let's see. The same parts showing the position of the arytenoid cartilages and vocal cords, drawn. Ah, okay. Ah, I see. So there was the posterior cricoarytenoid, which was opening. That's right. Okay, yeah, which was opening the vocal folds, and then he showed that. So when that was contracting, it was opening, and then. Oh, and it says glottis open and glottis shut and vice. I'm on a live stream, so it's I get some tunnel vision sometimes. So everything is pretty much the same as now. So this is the same anatomy as today. And this is like 1850 or something, and he's an old man by this time. So pretty cool. Figure 9. But we did read in the preface that some of this was added later. So I'm assuming this information was actually added later. So maybe something to keep in mind. And then I guess I'll keep reading the main... Oh no, it's more descriptions of the larynx. So figure 9... A vertical section of the larynx carried from side to side, the anterior half of the section being represented. So we still see this diagram today, maybe. 1, the cushion of the epiglottis. Okay. That's not something people talk about anymore. But I guess it's like the epiglottic mucosa, that area, and that's where you're going to be making the twang. Cool thing about this is it's showing you, let's see, section of the thyroid cartilages is 2. 1. It's hard to see, but which one is actually labeled as what? This is number 2. Second. We got number 2 there. And that's a section of the thyroid cartilage. 3. So he means cross section. And we're talking about when you're looking at this, what he means is this is thyroid cartilage. And then 3, looking at this, that's the cricoid cartilage. Vocal folds are right around here. And then 4. It's hard to see, but this stuff, number 4, is section of the first ring of the trachea. So someone's been sliced in half. And these are the cross sections. 5. The false chord in section. So this is this ventricular or vestibular folds. But we're talking about this area. 5. False chord in section. 6. I love this one. The ventricle, the ventricle of Morgagni, I guess. The ventricle of Morgagni. It's my ventricle. And that's this. And then 7 is the true. Is the true folds, as he calls it. The true chords, as he calls it. The vocal folds. Yeah. So, very interesting there. That's the diagrams. Figure 10. Figure 9. Oh, and he also says it is by the action of the true chords stopping and opening the air passage that the voice is produced. So he's mentioning that the vocal folds are a flow interrupter. That's the kind of source that it is. Figure 10, an outline of the larynx and the upper side of the trachea as viewed from its right side. Through the right ala of the thyroid cartilage are shown the arytenoid cartilage, A, and the vocal cord, B, forming together the right lip of the glottis. The dotted lines show the position taken by the arytenoid and cricoid cartilages, A through C, when the cricoid is drawn upwards by the contraction of the cricothyroid muscle, acting as shown by the arrows. The dot, D, of the inferior horn of the thyroid marks the ideal center of movement. It will be seen that the result is to increase the distance between the vocal process of the arytenoid cartilage and the thyroid, and in this way to tighten the vocal cord. So he's talking about stretching the vocal fold, basically, or tensioning the vocal fold. And he's talking about contraction of the cricothyroid muscle, which, you know, and while we're here, people mention a lot for some reason. Well, not for some reason. I know the reason. I'm just being cheeky. But this is the. Hang on. Here's our cricoid right here. So I'll just put CR for the cricoid. So that's the cricoid cartilage. And there's our thyroid cartilage. I'll just put TH. Right? And so we were looking at the same thing over on the left, remember. If we're looking at the cricoid itself in this diagram, which still has the trachea attached, you can see that at the base of, let me get the highlighter. So over here at the base of the cricoid, we go straight into the esophagus. So, as far back as Garcia, it was possible to figure out that you can't have cricoid tilt. It doesn't. There's this little tiny bit of play, but in the end, you're limited by this esophagus. So when you are making a contraction here between these two arrows, the thing that can move really is the thyroid. And that's what mostly winds up happening, or you get the tension on the vocal folds. But this thyroid winds up moving a lot more than the cricoid. And then another thing to notice is when you're talking about raising and lowering the larynx, it's like all of this whole thing. And then if you're wondering, well, then what about this trachea? Where's it going? Like, it's a tube. It's got to go somewhere. If the larynx is going up and down, how is this? And it's literally what's happening is the tube is poking more and less into your chest wall, basically. So that kind of cool. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling here. Sorry. So yeah, that's what he was describing. One of the ways you can raise the pitch, which is by lengthening the vocal folds by putting on this tension. Although I guess he's not being that specific. And then, good thing to keep in mind is the other way you can raise the pitch. And this first way I said does involve adjusting the pressure. You have to get the pressure and then the stretch right, then you get the pitch. But the other way, there's everything in between as well. You could also put this same tension on and then have tension at the same time that's resisting that. And some of that's going to come actually from the thyroarytenoid itself. So you're going to resist that if you resist that stretch and you increase the pressure, you still raise the pitch. It sounds different, but you raise the pitch. Yeah. Anyway, so just a thing to keep in mind if you're doing your voice course or whatever, and it tells you that the way to raise the pitch is stretching the vocal folds and adjusting the pressure to increase the frequency of oscillation that Garcia is mentioning here. Anyway. Now what is he saying? When a chord of a musical instrument oscillates, it condenses the air on the side it approaches, leaving behind an amount of expanded air equal to that displaced. 1 second. These two portions of air, compressed and expanded, are inseparable and form what is called a wave of sound. The waves of sound, in inverse order, are propagated on either side of the chord, and if the succession be regular or rhythmic and sufficiently rapid, they form a musical sound. Any irregular succession of waves produces only noise. In reaching the ear, the condensed portion of the air wave forces... In reaching the ear, the condensed portion of the air wave forces in the membrane, which closes the bottom of the auditory meatus. The rarefied portion draws it out again, and the oscillations transmit to the brain by means of the auditory nerve the vibrations which we appreciate as sound. So he's describing the process of hearing, but he's also the way that he's explaining how the sound is generated here is not how we say it anymore. I think it is still what we say for like a guitar or a piano or a violin. But what's happening with the vocal folds is very different. With the vocal folds, we have a source that's a flow interrupter. And well, I guess that's for another day, and hopefully like with a guest who can make us all feel smart while explaining exactly how vocal folds make sound anyway. So, but what I can tell you is it's not what he says. But the rest of it is, as far as I know, still how it works. So now that we've gotten past this note, we can read the actual book. Yeah. What is sound? Answer: the sensation made in the ear by vibrating air. And we just read the note about that. How does the glottis produce sounds? Second here. I'm just checking the comments. Metaphysical, that's interesting. I don't know. Do you know where you've heard that? I'd like to see this. It would be cool to see Caruso referring to the ventricles of Morgagni. I don't know if someone could look that up while I'm reading here. I mean, anyway, that would be helpful. How does the glottis produce sounds? Answer: the two lips of the glottis, which are separated in the act of breathing, meet when preparing to produce a sound and close the passage with the degree... Oh, so he's getting this right, yeah. With the degree demanded by the nature of the sound and the power with which it is to be emitted. Then, being pushed upwards by the air, they give way and allow a portion of air to escape, but immediately return to their original contact and recommence the action. These intermittent emissions or explosions of air, when regular and rapid enough, form a sound. But it's interesting. You can actually get like a sound and a pitch if it's extremely breathy, with the vocal folds never actually touching. So it's all weird with the way it's actually going on, what's actually happening. Yeah, and I'm not sure I understand it. Can you name any action which is an illustration of this? The action of the lips of a horn player is the answer. As far as I know, it's still true. It's especially the resonator that's different, but horn players have... Yeah, anyway. Question. Are the sounds obtained always of the same character? Answer: no. They may be bright and ringing or veiled. Question. How do you obtain these bright and veiled sounds? Answer. If after every explosion the glottis closes completely, each impinges sharply on the tympanic membrane, and the sound heard is bright or ringing. But if the glottis is imperfectly closed, and a slight escape of air unites the explosions, the impressions upon the tympanum are blunted, the sound being then veiled. The waste of air can be verified by placing a lighted match before the mouth. The brighter sound does not stir the flame. The veiled one will. Question. Has this observation any importance? Answer. Coupled with the theory of timbres and that of the breath, it puts the singer in possession of all the tints of the voice, and indeed initiates him into all the secrets of voice production. See timbre, page 11. So I'll stop here to explain a little bit. Garcia is giving his explanation of how of what would today be called the open quotient and the closed quotient, and exaggerated demonstration trying to keep basically everything else the same. I'll make one very veiled sound, and then I'll try to make a clear sound. Ah, ah. And those were both otherwise the same. Same mode, the same kind of weight, everything the same. Just in the first example, the vocal folds aren't really touching much at all, if they are touching. And in the second example, they're touching more. And he mentions that the vocal folds are closing fully. But what he could not have known, he with the technology of his day, he would not have been able to, as far as I know, figure out that the vocal folds can fully close, but then not stay closed as long for every vibration. So that when you're talking about the closed quotient, or what he calls he puts it on clarity versus veiled. But when he talks about the glottis closing completely, and then he's also talking about the sound being clear and ringing, then he's, I think, probably describing not only a higher closed quotient, but he's probably also describing a metallic sound, if it's a male. If we're talking about a soprano, then could be he's just someone with a pretty high closed quotient and singing high. So it depends. Whether he's wrong or right kind of depends here. But today we have a much better understanding of what's making the sound veiled, as he calls it, versus bright or ringing. And there's not only the question of this contact quotient, but then if, especially in the men's voices, there's a question of, is there this glottal pulse skewing, which I've explained before, where it sounds like the difference between this and this, this kind of roughness in the sound, that yeah. So if I'm using this kind of sound, there's metal in the voice, and if I take the metal out, even if I start to try to really make it a higher closed quotient, and I try to increase the volume, then I'm working really hard. And if I had a candle and I was doing both, then okay, for consonants in both cases you'll move the candle. But the vowels in the metallic version would not be moving the candle. Anyway, so what he's talking about is really important. I think we can now go even further than what he's saying. And I think it's also really important. He's talking about the source. So he's focusing on the source and how the source is important, which today I think can be left out sometimes. So, has this observation of any importance? Answer. Coupled with the theory of timbres and that of the breath, it puts the singer in possession of all the tints of the voice, and indeed initiates him into all the secrets of voice production. Question. What produces pitch? Answer. The number of explosions that occur in a given time. The greater the number, the higher the pitch. That's still true today. So the frequency of how many times the vocal folds are opening and closing is the pitch that we hear, pretty much, except for overtone singing. But anyway, yeah, and then you still kind of hear that. Yeah. What causes the intensity of the sound? Answer. Intensity of sound is not due to the amplitude of movement of the glottic lips, but to the quantity of air which makes one vivid explosion. The resistance offered by the lips to the pressure of the lungs determines this quantity. The amplitude is therefore a result, not a cause. After each explosion, the glottis must be reclosed. For if the air found a constant issue, the greater the expenditure of air, the weaker the sound would be. So, let's do that again. What causes intensity of sound? Answer. Intensity of sound is not due to the amplitude of movement of the glottic lips. So he's saying how intense the sound is not due to how far the vocal folds move, but to the quantity of air which makes one vivid explosion. And it doesn't say what about that quantity. But anyway, so it's not due to how far the vocal folds move, but to how much air comes out to make one burst. The resistance offered by the lips to the pressure of the lungs determines this quantity. The amplitude is therefore a result, not a cause. Okay. I guess he's saying how much the vocal folds move is not the cause of the explosion, it's just a result. It's not what makes the air come out, it's the result of the air and the resistance. After each explosion, the glottis must be reclosed. For if the air found a constant issue, the greater expenditure of air, the weaker the sound would be. Okay. How is the volume of sound obtained? Answer. The volume of sound depends on the expansion of the pharynx and of the vestibule of the larynx. And he doesn't say, what about them? But this is interesting. Let's get back to it in a second. Question. What range of vibrations can the human ear perceive? Answer. According to Helmholtz, from 16 vibrations to 38,000 in a second. Question. How is the rising scale formed? Answer. By the gradual tension, shortening, and thinning of the glottal lips. So, let's just start with this last one. How is the rising scale formed? By the gradual tension, shortening, and thinning of the glottic lips. As I was saying before, that's not always true. And then there's the two possibilities I gave of resisting the stretch, and then there's everything in between. And that itself has an effect on how strong the source is capable of being. The vibrations the human ear can perceive, we can skip. That's boring. So, this is interesting. So he knows that when there's a clear and ringing sound, there's less air coming out. But what I can't figure out from this is, does he know? Yeah, so how is volume of sound obtained? Saying, how do you get louder, in other words? Answer. The volume of sound depends on the expansion of the pharynx and of the vestibule of the larynx. So, okay. He's saying that how loud you are is going to depend on both the expansion of the pharynx and the vestibule of the larynx. Now, where this is in conflict with what he's already said, which we know today, and I guess he could have, I don't think he could have figured this out. He's looking with like the most crude laryngoscope that you could think of. When we say that he saw a human larynx in action, we're not talking about any like what you see on laryngoscopes. Like, he barely caught a glimpse. Everything he knows really comes from looking at dead people. Maybe like chopped in half. And maybe chopped into really thin slices, that kind of thing. And then some experience and stuff. We know today that, and he could have known from looking at a trumpet as well, that when you want to make this kind of resonator and source combination loud and clear, before this expansion in the pharynx or whatever, if you're going to have that, you need constriction in the vestibule of the larynx, sort of. That I guess that was this space between the that's the supraglottic mucosa, I guess, the space between the true folds and the vestibular folds. And with what he's got, he wasn't able to know about like the epiglottic narrowing and things. But if we go back to his diagram with the cross section, so if we look at this thing, you can already, you can get a sense that nature has kind of figured this out already. Hang on here. So if we have this kind of this kind of narrowing built in, and then with a lot of vocal coordinations where you're trying to get a really big sound, if especially for the male voices, you're trying to make this area in here really narrow. Your sort of epiglottic funnel, if we will. I don't know. Maybe it's different from for the sopranos so much, and he's basing everything on Jenny Lind. And maybe with the sopranos they really do have to have that more open. I don't know. But for a metallic sound, you have to have kind of the one constricted and the other one open. So the chest holds is a voice of the same nature throughout its how long have I gone here? Maybe I should. How long has this gone on? Let's see. Almost an hour. Let's see if I should go on here. So I wonder if these ventricles of Morgagni could be the piriform fossae. Maybe someone could look that up. I'll put a note here that I think maybe ventricles of Morgagni. I'll look this up later. Is that, how do you spell that? I think piriform fossae. Maybe Kurzel was inflating those. He does have this kind of mellow, dark sound, so maybe he's finding a way to keep them deliberately open sometimes. When you really constrict the epiglottic region there, I think they get like obliterated. But maybe with some of these coordinations, he's keeping them open, and I think that would mellow the sound probably. Yeah, and they would be acting not using this whole areas of interest thing, as far as I know. They would act like Helmholtz resonators, like because they are little separate chambers. They are little like Helmholtz resonators in your throat. You can smuggle things in there if you ever have to go to jail. I'm told. Never in jail. Anyway. The singing voice registers. Is a voice the same nature throughout its range? Answer. Every voice... but before I go on, I hope I made that clear. So that Garcia knows a lot about the glottis, but some things he's saying don't make sense. And we just know better in for some things. But then some things, they're exactly the same today. The singing voice registers. Question, is every voice the same throughout its range? Of the same nature throughout its range? Answer. Every voice is formed of 3 distinct portions or registers. Namely, chest, medium, and head. The chest holds the lowest place, the medium the middle, the head the highest. There's an interesting line. These names are incorrect, but accepted. So that's really interesting. I'm just going to keep going, but I don't know. I got to stop. So he's criticizing the terminology of his day, which I'm all for. That's my wheelhouse. Anyway. What is a register? A register is a series of consecutive homogeneous sounds produced by one mechanism, differing essentially from another series of sounds equally homogeneous produced by another mechanism, whereas whatever modifications of timbre and of strength they may offer. Each of the three registers has its own extent and sonority, which varies according to the sex of the individual and the nature of the organ. So that's why you got to be careful what you do in the morning before the performance. No, that's not what he means. So this isn't. So his theory of registers is that it's got to do with your biological sex, and then some individual variations. And he's got this theory that everyone's got three, but that the names are incorrect. So I guess he's saying the category is correct, but the name is incorrect? Or I don't know if he's saying the whole thing's just incorrect. I don't know. And he's saying that the one separate register is separated from the next by having different mechanisms. And I'm not sure what he means by mechanism. Like, does he mean a vibratory mechanism? I don't know if... Well, he doesn't have this concept of vibratory mechanism. So I think he's just kind of vague here. And he may be just... I don't know. We'll have to let him talk. Maybe he'll explain to us. How are these three registers obtained? Answer. When preparing to emit a sound, the two sides of the glottis, which are separated for breathing, shut the passage. And if the sound be a deep chest note, they become slightly tense. The whole length and breadth of the lips, comprising the anterior prolongation or process of the arytenoid cartilage and the vocal cord, are engaged in the vibrations. As the sounds rise in the register, the tension of the lips increases and the thickness diminishes. Meanwhile, the contact of the inner surfaces of the arytenoids will progress and extend to the end of the vocal processes. Okay, thereby shortening the vibratory length of the lips. The medium or falsetto is the result of similar actions, save that the lips come into contact not through their depth but merely at their edges. In both registers, the glottis has its length diminished from the back by the arytenoids, which advance their contact till their adhesion is complete. As soon as this takes place, the falsetto ceases, and the glottis, consisting of the vocal cords alone, produces the head register. The resistance opposed to the air by the large surfaces generates the chest register, and the feebler opposition presented by the edges produces the falsetto. Okay. So this today would be, I guess, M1 and M2. Something like that. And then he's got something in between. And I guess this, I mean, it's still true today just that you can observe that there's more than one mechanism available for many of the pitches in your voice. So okay, if you're a soprano singing like C6 or whatever, all right, there's only one, let's say, mode available, and probably you're also using falsetto, something like, yeah, you're probably in what they call M2, and you're not going to be having a metallic sound. So there's just that one thing available. And as you go lower, you would get to some region where something else is available. And if you consistently then did with that other thing that's available, and then every time you went higher, now you have to go to this other register. And then you can continue that process down your voice. Probably 3 is going to be your limit of like areas where you can stitch things together with just like a couple of modes or something, like, or just one mode. I don't know what he's saying here. And also, when you're, for instance, staying in a neutral mode, you have these passaggio areas that are tricky. And then if you're switching from a neutral mode to a metallic mode, then you might have areas where that's difficult and blah blah blah. So, but he's got these registers. It's low, like chest, medium, and head for everybody. And I guess he's saying the actual pitches are going to depend on your gender, well, your sex, your biological sex, and then your individual differences. What is meant by the break of the voice? Answer. The voice at the age of puberty undergoes a transformation. From that of a child, it becomes that of an adult. Question. What are those transformations? Answer. In girls, the voice acquires volume and strength. In boys, it acquires virile power and drops an octave in pitch. That's really fun to say, so. Question. What is meant by the break of the voice? Answer. The voice, at the age of puberty, undergoes a transformation. From that of a child, it becomes that of an adult. Question. What are those transformations? Answer. In girls, the voice acquires volume and strength. In boys, it acquires virile power and drops an octave in pitch. That's so fun to say. Question. At what age should the serious study of singing begin? Answer. From 16 for girls, and from 18 for boys, according to strength and climate, but not until the change is complete, as any tampering at this delicate period may ruin the voice forever. Oh, so some interesting things that he says here about puberty and everything, and I think this is about marketing, probably, what he's saying here. If I'm trying to get into, like, what would Garcia say? Why would he say it? And if you think about, like, how he's trying to make his money, he's trying to establish that having a tutor just at the age group where that's kind of possible is really important, because if you don't get one, you can ruin your voice forever. So that's Garcia. So I'm going to stop here. we're gonna start. So episode 2 stopped here. And then next time I'll keep going. So thanks for watching. Let's see. Yeah. Anyway. So thanks for watching. I'm going to see if there's any questions. No. Wasn't the most popular podcast today. I mean, live stream. Okay, so that's it for today. I guess I'll see you next time on Mr. Oh, I can go to my nice little scene here. Yeah, so thanks for joining me on Mr. Opera. My name is Philippe, and don't forget you can support me on coffee.com if you like this content. I'm going to continue next time with Manuel Garcia's Hints on Singing, section 6 of part 1, description of female voices. See you guys next time.
Calmen,